Hello and welcome to another episode of Marketing Sherpa Marketing Research in Action. I'm Daniel Burstein, the Director of Editorial Content here at MECLabs, and with me is Ninan Chacko, the CEO of PR Newswire, joining us all the way from New York.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I appreciate the invitation, and it's a pleasure to be here in Jacksonville.
Thanks for coming. So as you know, in Marketing Research in Action, we take all the research that Marketing Sherpa researchers are doing about effective marketing and talk to experts like Ninan about how you can conduct more effective marketing. So today we're going to look at some research from this benchmark report right here, the 2012 Search Marketing PPC, the 2012 Search Marketing SEO Edition benchmark report. We also have a PPC Edition benchmark report as well. And what we're going to talk about is content marketing products, what organizations using most often. And if you look at the top of this chart, you can see that web pages are being used by all sorts of organizations, right? Those three lines you're seeing, the line at the top is small organizations, the line in the middle is medium organizations, and the line at the top is large organizations. And web pages are being used quite often in content marketing. That doesn't surprise me, Ninan. We've seen that landing pages, web pages tend to be the hub of many social media and content marketing efforts. And I think talking before this, you've seen similar things, correct?
No, I think that's very much the trend we've also seen, Daniel. And I think they end up being really the nucleus of most digital marketing efforts. So we see them as being probably the most essential element, but really wrapped in with some of the other mechanisms I think that the actual research actually pointed to.
Yes, and the great thing about having it on your own web page is you can control conversion as well, right? So
absolutely, it's your real estate.
Yeah, so you've got the content there, you can drive to conversion goals. Social media, other than blogs, that was second, which is kind of interesting to me because blogs are so central to social media. But as you were saying, these are maybe companies that aren't able to create their own content yet and are sharing other content that they see through their social media channels.
And I think, Daniel, for me, that probably speaks to some of the essential challenge. I think as marketing has moved from this very brand-centric orientation to a much more conversational mode, the challenge is really creating high-quality content and being able to keep up that consistency and frequency of that content. So I think there's always, a desire to find and curate other valuable high-quality content, and I think obviously share it via social networks. So it may as much point, I think, to that continuing challenge of maintaining that cadence of high-quality content, initiation, origination, creation.
Yeah. One place where companies can have their own content is any sorts of product news or anything new going on with their company, new sponsorships, new charitable events. And that points directly to me to press releases, where when we looked at this press release data, it's very interesting. Medium companies and large companies are using it much more than small companies. Now, to me, that made more sense. We're talking in the more traditional world where it was important to be able to have those relationships with media and pitch. But as we were saying, journalism has become a lot more democratized. So how do you think small companies especially can be using more PR?
So I think actually PR as a vehicle, one of the aspects of usage that seems to have changed over time, particularly as the world shifts to a much more online and digital orientation, along with social kind of growing at the rate it's growing, is press releases are not only obviously the platform through which a story or a meme can be initiated, but they also act as a container, both in terms of links pointing to other forms of content, back to the website and its primacy in terms of the storytelling role of communicating information, but it can also contain other assets. Increasingly what we see our customers doing is actually using the press release platform as a means of wrapping in additional digital assets, which can include everything from videos, photographs, which obviously drive higher engagement, all the way to things like white papers, calls to action, etc. So they really form a hub, if you'd like, of content that an audience can engage with, interact with, and obviously find their way to more information, more detail, the website, etc. I think specifically for smaller companies, as I think the survey points out, increasingly, I think the price point and efficiency of press releases as a vehicle to push the story out and amplify the message and gain visibility starts to look very good in comparison with paid media. So I think actually for smaller companies, it becomes a very effective means of showing up, particularly as you see more and more self-service tools from companies like ourselves and some of our competitors.
Well, that's an interesting thing to talk about, paid media, right, which we're used to PPC and all these other things. But there's so much more opportunity for earned media now. As we said, there's so many more bloggers. There's so many more people even just tweeting, right?
Right.
And so I know as a blogger, it's hard to keep up with that constant need to get posts out. You're always looking for information. So I've seen a lot of the traditional press releases that we'd probably think of as, kind of the pseudo news article. But you want to talk about what you think a press release should look like in 2012? I've heard it called Press Release 2.0 and many other things.
So I think the core criteria to me for really what belongs in a press release, first and foremost, is something of value. Something as a piece of content that is high quality, that imparts value to the intended audience, and ultimately may incent them or drive them towards taking the right kind of action, connecting them to some outcome, whether it's a microstep in certainly your parlance, or whether it's ultimately to drive some level of advocacy, brand loyalty, interest, nurturing, etc. So I can't reinforce that point enough. It's really about the quality of the content. I think one of the things earned media has, I think, taken as a lesson in effect from social media is, I think it's important to be transparent, and I think it's important to also make sure that you're not simply acting in your own interests. I think in order to create a following in social media, I think it's important that you're able to impart value to any part of the discussion, engagement, or dialogue. So all of that, I think, is leading us back to essentially the role where enterprises, as they publish content through press releases, can actually first and foremost deliver some value to their end audience who might be interested in it. And then the press releases are really being used as a vehicle, as I'd mentioned earlier, in terms of directing that interest as it matures and it develops, either to the website, a specific landing page, to consume other assets that may be in it, such as videos or white papers, or to even take a particular action to express their interest further.
As you talk about that value, one interesting case study that we wrote about recently was using a press release actually for blog posts.
Yes.
So the company they had their blog, they were producing hopefully quality content on that blog, and then the press release was a way to get that blog out, almost a syndication or other channel like that. So as opposed to just doing press releases about new products, it was press releases creating content about content to further get it out there.
No, that's an excellent point, Daniel. In fact, I think if you looked historically at the value of the press release, it was really a template or a container to tell a story, and its intended audience was the media originally. But that media acted as a proxy for the ultimate audience, because through the viewership of their media properties and the demographics associated with it, you reached the ultimate audience that was really potentially would have an interest in that content. Today, while reach to the media is still a critical component of the value, it's really extended beyond not just the media and bloggers, for example, but really part of the online and digital value proposition of a press release distribution is really amplification and reach, specifically underpinned by search engine visibility, organic search engine visibility, syndication to online websites, and really social virality and sharing. And I think in time to come, and it's probably as much reflected, I think, in the survey data we've seen, while mobile is not a huge element of this, it's certainly growing. And so that will be part of that value proposition going forward.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I remember as a kid, I was a huge Mets fan, and I had to wait for the newspaper to come every day just to see the scores. Right. Now my kids, they can find out any information they want because they'll be looking for it, whether that comes from a press release or someplace else. And now they'll even be looking for it anywhere because they have those mobile apps, they have mobile devices to use. So.
Right, and I think actually that speaks to another fundamental point, I think, in terms of the role of really dissemination of content through all of these channels that I think your survey pointed out. There's now, I think, certainly a growing awareness that if a form of content can really find its way across multiple channels, across paid, across earned, across owned, across social, and across mobile, that cross-media integration really drives a higher outcome and a greater effect ultimately. So people are really looking not for the same verbatim content, but that content to be adapted to each of those environments, and really for it to be sequenced in such a way that it creates the right impact and outcome and amplification.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us, Ninan, CEO of PR Newswire, and thank you for joining us. You can find more case studies, how-to articles, and marketing research on marketingsherpa.com.
Thank you very much, Daniel, and thank you.